The world of Stray is awful. Classism, corporatism, and yes, capitalism collide in a cyberpunk city that can only be described as dystopian. But from out of this terrible world comes a beautiful story. These oppressive systems can be overcome. It's so simple that even a cat can do it.
What do you mean, even a cat can do it? You know, we're a very intelligent species.
Sorry, I meant no offense to felines. It's just certain forces in the world feel unstoppable at times. But a creature as innocent and small in stature as a cat can totally overcome them. It's very subversive. The best way to talk through a cat-led revolution is to simply walk through the full story of Stray. You'll see recurring themes and motifs that demonstrate what I said before. Seemingly insurmountable odds can be overcome with the simplest changes. I already gave you a spoiler warning, so don't get mad. We're gonna go through the whole game. That starts with our protagonist hanging out in a cave with all their cat buddies. It's a classic rainy day opening. If you know your symbolism, then you know that rain is always an omen. But hey, at least you can spend your time safely inside the cave, staying dry. Then the weather clears up, and as you tumble around doing cat things, you wind up separated from your feline friends. You see, a common tactic of an oppressive system is isolation. The one robot you meet in this first section of the game dies in front of you, leaving you totally alone. When you can't contact others, when you can't communicate with the outside world, that's when you begin to lose hope. But it's not totally lost. A few steps more and you can get inside a building by jamming a fan with a bucket. This is a representation of everything you'll do in the impending adventure. You will literally and metaphorically jam up the system. As you slip through additional sets of fan blades, you start to realize why you are the one meant for this task. You're a cat, and you can do things that others can't, like outrun the strange creatures known as Zerks. In less dangerous situations, it means squeezing through bars, walking over scaffoldings, and getting away with a whole lot of shenanigans because you're tiny and cute. The nonchalance of just being a cat stands in stark contrast to the rundown state of the city. You can see a lot of wrinkles in the system if you look for them. For example, somehow your meow can affect electronics. Must be a frequency thing.
It's true. I actually just purr anytime I want to skip a song on Spotify.
These discoveries lead you to B12, a robot companion who, unlike you, can talk. At this moment, our hero metaphorically finds their voice. They've seen the terrible state of the city and are ready to do something about it, even if they don't fully comprehend it in their cat brain. B12 doesn't understand the whole situation either. It knows it used to work for a scientist and that it has a desire to return to the outside, but that's it. As the two of you explore the city, memories are slowly restored, serving both as collectibles and as important pieces of in-game history. I see another layer to this. Part of what allows a corrupt system to stay in power is the spread of disinformation. Many intentional lies are discovered as the game goes on, and B12's robot amnesia serves a similar purpose. You can't fight something you don't yet understand. B12 and our feline friend are going off of gut feeling and basic directives at this point. Of course, we the players don't really understand the situation either, which is why B12 is an important companion for us too. We know something is wrong, and it ought to be made right. So B12 gets to be the spokesperson for not just a cute little cat, but us too. With the floating robot by our side, we'll be able to communicate with the other bots that inhabit this city.
Oh goody, you know, I have a lot I want to get off my chest.
Don't get too excited. It's still a big bummer most of the time. These slums are the dumping ground for the garbage from above. We don't literally dump trash on the poorest class in the real world, but we come awfully close in the United States. I can't help but think of how the runoff from big chemical companies is mixed right into the drinking water of poor communities. So it's strange and sad to see robots occupying these slums. After all, they're not living organic beings like you or me. There is no social or economic hierarchy among robots. At least, there shouldn't be. As it turns out, the robots in this city mimic the humans that once lived here who knows how long ago. We see them sitting around the bar, we see them playing music, we see them working blue-collar jobs, which we can of course mess with as a meddlesome little cat. We can also see that they grow plants, and that's when B12 spells it out. The robots do this because it's what humans would have wanted. The robots want life to continue as it was. It might sound nice, but this is an indictment of the human society that came before. Robots are only doing what they saw humans doing, oppressing one another, allowing these squalid living conditions to persist. The lesson during this first act is already very clear. If we don't change, this will be our legacy too. Thankfully, there is a group looking to spark a revolution. The Outsiders are a group of 4 robots who want to escape the walls of the city and reach the outside, just as B12 does. Their name is literal. The Outsiders want to see the outside, but it also reflects their philosophy. They are outsiders in their thinking. They are not like their fellow robots. They are not content to continue the oppressive legacy that humans left behind, and instead want to see the isolated city opened up. They are outside of the mainstream programming of their fellow robots. They are outsiders.
Oh, I knew there was something under the surface. Speaking of which, I've got this itch behind my ear. Oof. Anyway, please continue.
Even in the most restrictive of circumstances, there are always rebels. Our cat hero, B12, and the Outsiders are not alone in their desire to escape the city, and that common goal unites them. The next step is to raise a signal and bring together other like-minded people. And you literally do raise a signal as your next objective. The first outsider you meet is Momo, and he tasks you with taking a transceiver to a high point in the slums where it can broadcast the necessary signal. As expected, you are the only one capable of doing this. Your feline agility means you can avoid all those nasty zerks. You'll spend time both running from them and learning about them in this chapter. These overgrown bacteria are the result of all that trash dumping, which was carried out by a megacorporation in the upper levels called NecoCorp. The lack of sunlight, caused by the city's artificial roof, allowed the trash germs to grow to the size of a small pet, making them a serious threat to anyone living down here. It says a lot that the only organic creatures in this zone are disgusting blobs that leave behind webs of red goop. Once again, the finger is pointed at us. You can directly view humans as the pests that cause destruction, or as the bystanders who let this happen, but in both cases, we're at fault. The message is being broadcast loud and clear. We need to change, lest we create a future like this. Once the signal is up, we can track down another member of the Outsiders, Doc, an obvious homage to Back to the Future's Dr. Emmett Brown. We said before that there's strength in numbers, and here our rebel force grows. Doc returns to the slums and reunites with his robot son, Seamus. Isolation, or dividing and conquering, is a tool of an oppressive system. By reuniting families and members of the resistance, we can start fighting back.
Indeed. See, there are 3 of me now. I can take over the world.
Okay, I think you need to chill out a bit there, buddy. And actually, after a trip through the sewers, Stray gives us a chance to relax for a moment too. To reach the next level of the city, we have to climb Antvillage. This is perhaps the happiest stuff we'll see until the end of the game. There's a real sense of peace and serenity here. We see robots playing mahjong, and we see more gardening. There's even time for a sneaky Skyrim joke.
Some may call this junk. Me, I call them treasures.
Even though we know the robots are only acting the way the humans did, it all seems okay in this instance. The settlement is secure and seemingly self-sustaining. Despite the mound of garbage at its base, Antvillage stands tall and well-decorated. It's also home to Zabaltazar, the 3rd member of the Outsiders. He's uploaded his consciousness to a series of TV screens, having ascended beyond his robot shell. But as transcendent as that sounds, it's not a true escape. He leaves behind villagers who do technically live peaceful, sequestered lives, but they still exist between the margins of an oppressive city. We see a lot of beauty in this chapter, but it's a facade. The true victory will come when all the citizens are freed, not just plugged into a different system.
Okay, it's just me again, but now you've got me thinking about watching television. Would that be too gauche right now?
Antvillage also lulls you into a false sense of security, setting up expectations that Midtown will be a better place than the slums. Economically, it certainly is, but as you learn almost immediately upon entering, it has its own set of problems. Midtown is a police state. Robot cops and floating sentinels patrol the streets. Remember, the robots are only continuing to do what the humans did. They saw the way the police force acted and proceeded to copy it. Even the sentinels became a tool of the corporate ruling class, who we now know to be Necocorp. It's here that we also learn Necocorp is straight up lying to its workers. Gary the robot believes that waste is being recycled and repurposed downstairs, aka the lower levels of the city. As we're well aware, that's not true at all. That garbage is being dumped on slum residents as the company turns its back and rakes in the profits. Because the robots are only copying us, we can extrapolate darker truths from this. Gary is fed this lie by the company, which means their disinformation was so pervasive that it became the basic programming of its robot workers once the humans were gone. Yet again, this is a damning look at the way we run things now. Fortunately, Midtown is also the place where we spark the revolution, and that's not just a turn of phrase in this case. After meeting Clementine, the last member of the Outsiders, we're tasked with sneaking into Necocorp and stealing a battery. We are literally going to give power back to the people. Doing so means witnessing that infamous garbage dumping ourselves. If that doesn't motivate you to get the job done, I don't know what will.
Catnip is usually a great incentive for me. Sorry, not the time.
Once you've got the battery in hand, you're rewarded with betrayal. You and Clementine are handed over to the authorities, and you find yourself in prison. Unfortunately, this is often the reality for those trying to make radical change, if they don't outright die for the cause. That feeling of isolation creeps back as you hang alone in a small cat-sized cage. At this point, you have to use the lessons you learned so far to get out of here. You overcome the isolation, then find strength in numbers again by reuniting with Clementine and B12. There's a bonus lesson here too. You can also learn that you're not the only ones thrown in here for trying to make a change. Lupin the robot was imprisoned for overclocking his system. When it comes to oppression, there is no room for bettering yourself. You do your tasks for the company, and that's it. You try to work smarter, not harder, and you find yourself in prison. Flipping the system means a better future not just for those with a degree of freedom, but also for those who find themselves unduly punished. Once you're free, relatively speaking, you can put the final step of the plan into motion. Clementine speeds away from the pursuing sentinels and drops you off near the subway entrance with a key. Then she drives off, keeping the sentinels distracted. Sadly, that's not the only sacrifice we'll see in the game's final act.
Oh no, I hope nothing happens to my fellow cat.
The stolen battery powers up the subway car, and Clementine's key sends you off to your last stop. The slums occupy the lowest level of the city. Midtown is midway up the ladder, as its name says, and the control room sits high above everything else. It's almost laughable when you first start walking around this final area. This measly little control room is the source of so much strife. It can open up the city gates, and it can open up the roof that cuts off the city from that beautiful sunlight above. There are several robot janitors in this upper chamber. How easy would it have been for any one of them to fix the problem? That's the sad reality we face in the real world. Some folks just don't see the problem in front of their face, thanks to active disinformation, or a willingness to turn a blind eye, or a resignation to a system that seems unchangeable. But B12 and the cat aren't like that. They're here to make a change. Once the control room is hacked, the roof is pulled back, the gates open wide, and all is well in the walled city. Or so you'd think. Hacking the control room takes all the juice in B12's little body, and it knowingly sacrifices itself to see the mission through. Our little friend gets fried a few times during the journey, but not like this. B12 doesn't get back up after pushing itself to the limit. Sacrifices like this are necessary for change. Momo and Doc gave their time and energy, Clementine willingly became the target of the Sentinels, and B12 paid the ultimate price. In the end, only the cat walks through the front gates. It's a bittersweet ending in that regard.
I'm glad the cat is okay, but that was a real tearjerker losing the robot.
Stray is bookended by moments outside the wall. The game starts with an example of what life could be. We need only look to the animals to see nature at work, to see the way the circle of life should intrinsically operate. But oppressive, man-made systems get in the way. Necocorp's inhumane practices and greed, combined with the control room's totalitarian grip on the city, turned it into a dystopia. The blame is squarely placed on humans for that downfall. The continuing oppression of the robots is only because they want to act like us. They saw the way we treated others, and they continued to do the same. But as dire as the situation is, it's not hopeless. In the case of Stray, one little cat was the first domino that eventually toppled the whole system. Half the time these missions were completed thanks to incidental cat behavior. How much more could humans do if we took the time to look around, see the plight of others, and do something to make the world a better place for all of us? That's what Stray challenges its players to do, by presenting a subversive victory over a seemingly omnipotent force. The city you explore is a textbook dystopia, but it's saved in the end, all thanks to one little cat. It was me all along! Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what Framework is doing, definitely hit that subscribe button in the middle. It would help me out an awful lot if you do. And if you want to see what we've already cooked up, you can hit that link on the far left. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.